Oh gosh, yeah. But separation of church and state, that's actually a really interesting question. And a tough one to answer because there is the side of where if you combine church and state, there is the risk of people coming into government that are, for example, let's say Christian in this scenario, coming into government that are not actually Christian, not there for Christian values and pushing Christian agendas forward, for example, in this scenario. It'd be similar to like if somebody came in and infected Muslim-based governments or Arab governments and whatnot, or Islamic governments, whatever you want to call them, and they infected and they weren't actually really believers in the Quran or anything that Muslims held dear or whatnot, and they infected their way of life by their own agendas, own ideas, own ideologies, etc. So there is the risk of that with church and state. I'm not going to deny that at all with having them together, for example, which truthfully, up until I'd have to get an exact number on the date when the first law was put into place to separate church and state, but I believe it was in the 40s or the 50s, 1940s, 1950s in the U.S. Before that, it was very, very common for Christianity and the Bible to be taught in school.
Sure.
And be a part of the state, the values that came along with the state.
Right.
And also, the separation of church and state, if we're talking 40s and 50s in the U.S., is when we really started getting infected in this country too. So you could trace back timeline-wise to that a little bit, because hypothetically before that 40s and 50s, we were not that national superpower yet. Technically, we were a great country at that point in time. Again, like as we talked about, Mitchell and I's family was here at that point in time. So we had great freedoms that came along with it, great exploration, etc. But we weren't necessarily the superpower we think of ourselves as now.
Mm-hmm.
But, so hypothetically before then, there wasn't much corruption in the Christian aspect of it. Now, naturally, there's going to be the sin, the human nature aspect that comes into it always, 100%. So it's hard to say what would be best to advocate for, because the thing is, if we were to go back to church and state being combined, it would be a very, very long process for that to be done, because we would have to make sure the leeches, the infection was cleared, so to speak, is what I would call it.
Well, another roadblock to that would be the First Amendment.
Correct.
And so we have that for a reason. And so I think there does need to be that separation, which is why it is the way it is now, because we do have a Bill of Rights. We do have those amendments for a reason. And so, like you just said, if you were to go back to combining them in today's age, I think a lot of problems could arise. A lot of conflict, violence most likely. Because religious wars are never won. Look at the Middle East for literally ever.
Unless it's the Crusades.
Right.
Then we whoop that ass.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other point. Yeah.
We showed them what's up.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to encroach on our territory? Okay.
See ya.
We're actually going to push you all the way back to the Middle East and shit on you the entire way there. Not to describe the Crusades in that way, but, sorry for historians. They'll be like, oh, man, that's not really...
Man, you're so wrong. Well, was it?
Crusades bring back... Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
I just think a lot of problems could come from that,
Yes.
And number one, more problems is the last thing we need right now.
Yep.
Now, we also see where there's problems where the freedom of religion causes problems in today's age, too, still. I mean, you have, within this country, you have religious battles, not literal violent battles per se, but you still have battles, and one is going to believe, or one is going to believe that theirs is the best or the only. One's going to believe that theirs is, just like we believe Christianity to be that.
Yeah, cultures clashing, so to speak.
Exactly. So I think a lot of problems can arise from that. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I think your points were solid for both sides of it.